The old soldier walked slowly into the grand assembly hall of the Galactic Council. His name was Vexes Tauren, and he was a Krellian warrior who had seen more battles than most species lived years. His hard shell was covered with scars. Some were old and faded, others were fresh and still healing. He moved with a limp that he had earned in a war that nobody in this room could understand. The hall was massive. It could hold representatives from over 1,000 different worlds. Today, only the senior council members were present. They sat in a half-circle on raised platforms, looking down at Vex Tauren like judges examining a criminal. But he was not here to be judged. He was here to give testimony. High Arbiter Zixala, a tall being made of crystal and light, spoke first. Her voice echoed through the chamber like wind through a canyon. Vex Tauren of the Krellian Empire. You have been summoned to provide information about the species known as humans. They have applied for membership in the Galactic Federation. You fought alongside them during the Dominion conflict. Tell us what we should know. Vex Tauren stood in the center of the floor. His 4 eyes moved across the assembly, studying each representative. He saw the Veloci ambassador, a creature made of thick blue gel that could survive in almost any environment. He saw the Tellurian diplomat, a small being with 6 arms and skin like polished metal. He saw dozens of other species, all of them powerful, all of them ancient, all of them thinking that they understood the galaxy. None of them understood humans. I did not come here to give a report, Vex Tauren said. His voice was rough, from old injuries to his throat. I came here to give a warning. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The representatives looked at each other with confusion. The Veloci ambassador made a wet sound that was his species' version of laughter. A warning? The Veloci said. About humans? We have studied their biology. They are soft creatures with no natural weapons. They have no claws, no venom, no armor. Their eyesight is average at best. Their hearing is poor. They cannot even see in the dark without technology. What could possibly be dangerous about them? Vex Tauren turned to face the Veloci directly. I watched a human female track a wounded Dominion assassin through 40 kilometers of jungle. The assassin was a Krath warrior, bred for killing, trained from birth, equipped with the finest stealth technology. The human had nothing but a knife and her own 2 feet. The chamber grew quiet. She followed that assassin for 3 days. Vex Tauren continued. She did not stop to rest. She did not stop to eat. She did not stop to sleep. The Krath tried everything to lose her. He ran. He hid. He doubled back. He set traps. Nothing worked. She just kept coming. Hour after hour. Day after day. Always behind him. Always getting closer. Vex Tauren paused to let his words sink in. On the 3rd day, the Krath collapsed from exhaustion. His body simply gave out. He could not run anymore. He could not fight anymore. He lay on the ground, waiting for death, and the human walked up to him, knelt down, and killed him with a piece of metal she had sharpened on a rock. The Veloci had stopped laughing. Humans call this persistence hunting. Vex Tauren explained. It is how their ancestors survived on their home world. They did not need claws or venom. They did not need speed or strength. They simply followed their prey until it died from exhaustion. Nothing could escape them. Nothing could outlast them. They are the greatest endurance hunters in the known galaxy. High Arbiter Zixala leaned forward. One impressive hunter does not make a species dangerous. One. That hunter's name was Katie Martinez, Vex Tauren said. She was not a soldier. She was a cook on a cargo ship. She had no military training. She had never killed anyone before that day. But when the Dominion took her crew prisoner, something woke up inside her. Something old. Something that her species has carried in their blood for millions of years. He took a step forward. You want to know what makes humans dangerous? It is not their weapons. It is not their technology. It is not their numbers. It is their instincts. Deep inside every human, there is a predator waiting to be unleashed. They have spent thousands of years building civilizations and creating laws to keep that predator under control. They have taught themselves to be kind, to be peaceful, to solve problems with words instead of violence. Vextoran's voice dropped lower. But when you threaten them, when you hurt the people they care about, when you make them feel like prey instead of predator, all of that civilization falls away. And what remains is the most efficient killing machine that evolution has ever produced. The Tellurian diplomat raised one of his 6 arms. Surely you exaggerate. We have records of humans being captured, being defeated, being killed. They are not invincible. No, Vextoran agreed. They are not invincible. They can be killed. But killing one human often makes the others more dangerous, not less. They do not surrender when their friends die. They do not run. They get angry. And an angry human is something that even the Dominion learned to fear. He turned to address the entire assembly. I am going to tell you a story. It happened 6 standard months ago. On a Dominion prison ship. I was there. I saw everything with my own 4 eyes. And when I am finished, you will understand why I came here today to warn you. Vextoran took a deep breath. Accept the humans into the Federation. Make them your allies. Give them respect and friendship. Because I promise you, with every scar on my body, you do not want to make them your enemies. The galaxy is not ready for what happens when humans decide that something needs to die. Crom. The chamber was silent. Even the Veloci had nothing to say. Let me tell you about the crew of the Starlight Meridian. Vextoran began. Let me tell you about Captain Daniel Reyes, and the engineer named Sam Porter, and the medical officer called Laura Kim. Let me tell you what they did when the Dominion made the mistake of putting them in a cage. He settled into a more comfortable stance. This was going to take a while. It started with a routine survey mission in the Outer Rim. 12 humans on a small cargo ship, doing the kind of boring work that keeps civilizations running. They had no idea that they were about to become the most feared creatures in Dominion space. The representatives leaned forward in their seats. Despite their fear, despite their doubt, they wanted to hear this story. They needed to understand what kind of species was asking to join their federation. Vextoran was happy to tell them. He had been waiting for this moment ever since the humans had saved his life. It began when the Dominion raiders dropped out of hyperspace. The Starlight Meridian was a small cargo ship. It was not built for war. It was not built for speed. It was built to carry supplies from one colony to another, doing the quiet work that kept the Outer Rim settlements alive. The crew was made up of 12 humans who had signed up for easy money and boring days. Captain Daniel Reyes had been flying cargo ships for 15 years. He was a calm man in his 40s, with gray hair at his temples and steady hands. He had never fired a weapon in anger. He had never been in a real fight. He thought his biggest problem would be keeping his crew from getting too bored during the long trips between stars. He was wrong. The day started like any other. The Starlight Meridian was conducting survey scans of an asteroid field, looking for valuable minerals that mining companies might want to buy. It was tedious work, but it paid well enough to keep the ship running. Sam Porter was in the engine room when the first alarm went off. He was the ship's engineer, a young man of 28 with quick fingers and a clever mind. He could fix almost anything with spare parts and creative thinking. He looked up from his work and frowned at the flashing red light. "What's happening?" he called into his communication device. The answer came from Laura Kim, the ship's medical officer. Her voice was tight with fear. "Raiders. Dominion raiders. 3 ships just dropped out of hyperspace." Sam felt his stomach drop. Everyone in the Outer Rim knew about the Dominion. They were slavers, pirates, and murderers. They took what they wanted and killed anyone who got in their way. A small cargo ship like the Starlight Meridian had no chance against even one Dominion raider. 3 was a death sentence. On the bridge, Captain Daniel Reyes was already trying to save his crew. He pushed the engines to maximum power, trying to reach the nearest jump point. But the Dominion ships were faster. They surrounded the Starlight Meridian like wolves circling a wounded animal. "Cargo vessel." A harsh voice crackled over the communication system. "This is Commander Krathel of the Dominion. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be punished with death." Daniel looked at his crew. He saw fear in their eyes, but he also saw something else. He saw trust. They were waiting for him to make a decision. He made the only choice he could. "All hands," he announced over the ship's speakers. "Prepare for boarding. Do not resist. Stay calm. Stay alive. That's an order." The Dominion soldiers came aboard with weapons drawn. They were Krath warriors, a species bred for violence. They stood 7 feet tall with thick gray skin and 4 arms that ended in claws sharp enough to cut through metal. Their eyes glowed red in the dim light of the cargo ship. They rounded up the crew and forced them to kneel in the main cargo bay. Krathel walked among them, studying each human like a farmer examining livestock. 12 specimens, he said to his second in command. Healthy enough, they will fetch a good price at the slave markets on Korath. Daniel looked up at the Dominion commander. "We are citizens of the Earth Federation. Our government will pay ransom for our return. You do not need to sell us." Krathel laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Your federation is weak. They will send strongly worded messages and do nothing. By the time they even learn of your capture, you will be scattered across a dozen different worlds, serving a dozen different masters." He grabbed Laura Kim by the hair and pulled her head back. "This one is pretty for a human. Perhaps I will keep her for myself." Something changed in the cargo bay. The humans went still. Not the stillness of fear, but the stillness of hunters watching their prey. Even Vex Torin, who had been captured weeks earlier and was already on the prison ship, would later describe feeling a strange chill run down his spine. Daniel Reyes looked at Krathel with eyes that had gone cold and flat. "Let her go." The Dominion commander laughed again. "Or what, human? You are on your knees. You have no weapons. You are nothing. Let her go," Daniel repeated. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "And I promise, when this is over, I will make your death quick." Krathel stared at the human for a long moment. Then, he threw Laura aside and kicked Daniel in the face. Blood sprayed across the cargo bay floor. "Take them to the ship," Krathel ordered. "Separate the males from the females. Begin the breaking process." The humans were dragged onto the Dominion prison ship. They were thrown into cells with prisoners from a dozen other worlds: Krellians, Tellurians, Valashi, and species that had no names in any human language. All of them had the same look in their eyes. It was the look of creatures who had accepted death. Vex Torin was in one of those cells. He watched the humans being pushed through the corridors, and he felt something that he had not felt in years. He felt curiosity. These new prisoners were different. They did not cry. They did not beg. They looked around the prison ship with sharp eyes, taking in every detail. The guards, the doors, the cameras, the patrol patterns. They were memorizing everything. Sam Porter was thrown into the same cell as Vex Torin. The young engineer hit the ground hard, but he was on his feet again within seconds. He looked around the cell, studying the walls, the floor, the ceiling, the lock on the door. "How long have you been here?" Sam asked Vex Torin. The old Krellian warrior shrugged. 27 days. "It does not matter. We will all be sold soon." 27 days, Sam repeated. He nodded to himself, as if this information was useful. "What have you learned about the ship?" "Sid." Vex Torin stared at the human. "Learned? I have learned that escape is impossible. I have learned that resistance means death. I have learned that hope is a luxury that prisoners cannot afford." Sam smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had just accepted a challenge. 27 days is a long time, he said. "You must have noticed things. Guard schedules. Weak points in security. Which officers are lazy? Which ones are cruel? Which ones are scared?" "Why does it matter?" Vex Torin asked. Sam looked at the old warrior with eyes that seemed far older than his young face. "Because we're getting out of here," he said. "All of us. Every prisoner on this ship. And anyone who tries to stop us is going to die." Vex Torin had lived for 300 years. He had fought in wars that lasted longer than most species lived. He thought he had seen everything. But looking into that human's eyes, He realized that he had never truly seen a predator before. "You are insane," Vex Torin whispered. "Maybe," Sam admitted. "But you haven't seen what humans can do when we're angry. And right now, I am very, very angry." In her cell on the other side of the ship, Laura Kim was thinking the exact same thing. And in his cell near the cargo hold, Captain Daniel Reyes was already planning how to kill everyone who had hurt his crew. The Dominion had made a terrible mistake. They had put predators in cages and called them prey. They would not live to regret it. The first 3 days on the prison ship were about watching and waiting. The humans did not make any moves. They did not cause any trouble. They followed orders and ate their food and slept when they were told to sleep. The Dominion guards thought they had broken them already. They were wrong. In his cell, Sam Porter counted footsteps. Every time a guard walked past, he counted how long it took. Every patrol, every shift change, every meal delivery. He built a map in his head of when the corridors were empty and when they were full. Laura Kim did the same thing from her cell. She watched the guards carefully, studying how they moved, where they kept their weapons, which ones were alert and which ones were lazy. She also watched her fellow prisoners, learning who might be useful in a fight and who would freeze when the moment came. Captain Daniel Reyes spent his time talking to the other prisoners. He asked questions about the ship, about the Dominion, about anything that might help them escape. He was patient and friendly, and soon the other prisoners began to trust him. But it was the interrogations that truly showed what humans were made of. The Dominion liked to torture their prisoners. It was not just for information, it was for entertainment. They would take a prisoner to the interrogation room and hurt them for hours, then throw them back in their cell as a warning to the others. On the 4th day, they took Sam. The guards dragged him down the corridor to a room filled with metal tables and strange machines. The head interrogator was a creature called Vrex, a specialist who had broken thousands of prisoners over his long career. He looked at Sam with cold, empty eyes. "Human," Vrex said. "I am going to ask you questions. You are going to answer them. If you lie, I will hurt you. If you refuse to speak, I will hurt you. If I get bored, I will hurt you. Do you understand?" Sam nodded. "I understand." The interrogation lasted 6 hours. Vrex used tools that were designed to cause maximum pain without killing. He cut Sam. He burned him. He broke his fingers one by one. Through it all, Sam screamed and cried and begged for mercy, just like any prisoner would. But he did not break. Every time Vrex asked a real question, Sam gave him wrong information. He lied about Earth's defenses, about human technology, about everything. And between the screams, he studied the room. He memorized the location of every tool, every weapon, every exit. When they threw Sam back into his cell, Vex Torin looked at the young human with horror. Sam's body was covered with wounds. His hands were swollen and bloody. He should have been crying, should have been broken. Instead, Sam was smiling. "You are insane," Vex Torin said. "Truly insane. Pain is just information," Sam replied. He spat blood onto the floor and sat up against the wall. "My body is telling me that I'm still alive. That's all I need to know. How can you smile after what they did to you?" Sam held up his broken hands. Hidden in his palm was a thin piece of metal, about the length of a finger. He had stolen it from the interrogation room while Vrex was focused on hurting him. "Because now I have a weapon," Sam said. Over the next 4 days, Sam worked on that piece of metal. He sharpened it against the floor of his cell, slowly and carefully, making sure the guards never saw what he was doing. By the time he was finished, it was a blade sharp enough to cut through flesh and armor alike. The humans communicated through the walls and through the ventilation system. They developed a simple code using knocks and taps. 3 taps meant stay ready. 5 taps meant tonight. 2 long taps meant abort. On the 8th day, Laura tapped 5 times against her cell wall. Tonight. The plan was simple, because simple plans were the hardest to stop. During the shift change, there would be 2 minutes when the corridor outside Sam's cell was empty. He would use his blade to disable the lock, Get out, kill the first guard he saw, and take the guard's weapon. Then he would free the others. Simple, dangerous, necessary. Sam waited by the door, counting heartbeats. His broken fingers had healed just enough to grip the blade. His body was still covered with wounds. But the pain no longer mattered. Nothing mattered except the next 2 minutes. The guard walked past. Sam counted to 60. Then to 90. Then to 120. The corridor was empty. Sam slid his blade into the gap between the door and the wall. He had spent hours studying this lock, watching how the guards opened it. He knew exactly where to push, exactly how hard, exactly at what angle. The lock clicked open. Sam stepped into the corridor just as a guard turned the corner. It was one of the Krath warriors, 7 feet tall with 4 arms and claws that could cut through steel. The guard saw Sam and reached for his weapon. He was too slow. Sam drove his blade through the gap between the guard's helmet and chest armor. It was a tiny target, less than an inch wide. But humans had been throwing rocks at small targets for millions of years. Their aim was built into their bones. The guard fell without making a sound. Sam took the guard's weapon and moved down the corridor. He freed Captain Daniel Reyes first, then Laura Kim, then the rest of the human crew. By the time the first alarm sounded, all 12 humans were armed and moving. They freed Vex Tauren next. The old Krellian warrior looked at the dead guards on the floor and felt something strange in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize the feeling. It was hope. "Follow us or stay," Daniel told the other prisoners. "We're leaving this ship." 34 prisoners chose to follow the humans. They were the ones who still had fight left in them, the ones who had not yet given up. The others stayed in their cells, too broken to believe that escape was possible. Laura Kim handed a weapon to Vex Tauren. "Can you fight?" The old warrior took the weapon and checked its charge. "I have been fighting since before your species learned to walk upright. I can fight." Laura smiled at him. It was a warm, gentle smile that reminded Vex Tauren of his own daughter, who had died in a war long ago. "Good," Laura said. "Stay close to me. I'll keep you alive." Then her smile faded, and Vex Tauren saw something else in her eyes. Something old and cold and hungry. "And I'll need your help counting bodies," she added. The hunt had begun. The prison ship was called the Iron Fist. It was one of the largest vessels in the Dominion fleet, built to hold over 1,000 prisoners and crewed by 200 soldiers. It had thick armor, heavy weapons, and a reputation for being impossible to escape. The escaped prisoners numbered 34. They had 7 weapons between them. By any reasonable calculation, they should have been recaptured within the hour. Captain Daniel Reyes gathered his people in a storage room near the lower decks. His face was bruised and swollen from the beating he had received during capture. 2 of his ribs were broken, and his left arm hung at a bad angle. But his eyes were clear, and his voice was steady. "We have 2 choices," he said. "We can find a place to hide and wait for rescue, or we can take this ship." A Krellian warrior named Tox Rand shook his head. "Take the ship? With 34 fighters and 7 weapons? The Dominion outnumber us 6 to 1. They know this ship, we do not. It would be suicide." Daniel nodded. "You're right. If we fight their war, we lose. So we're not going to fight their war. We're going to fight ours." He turned to Sam Porter. "Sam, I need you to find the ship's power systems. Can you cause problems without shutting down life support?" Sam thought for a moment. "I can make the lights flicker. Kill power to certain sections. Mess with the environmental controls enough to make them uncomfortable, but not enough to hurt anyone." "Good. Do it." Daniel looked at Laura Kim. "Laura, I need you to find the medical bay. Steal everything useful. Drugs that put people to sleep. Chemicals that make smoke or bad smells. Anything we can use." Laura nodded. "I'll take 2 people with me. Take Vex Tauren. He knows the ship better than we do." The old Krellian warrior stepped forward. "I do not understand your plan, human. What do flickering lights and bad smells accomplish against 200 armed soldiers. Daniel smiled. It was not a kind smile. We're not going to fight them, he explained. We're going to hunt them. There's a difference. Over the next 6 hours, the escaped prisoners turned the Iron Fist into a nightmare. It started with the lights. Sam found the power control room and killed the lights in Section 7. The Dominion sent a team to investigate. They found nothing but empty corridors and shadows. Then a guard in Section 3 went missing. His body was found an hour later, stuffed into a ventilation shaft. His weapon was gone. His throat had been cut. The Dominion commander, Krathel, ordered his soldiers to search in pairs. No one was to walk alone, standard procedure for dealing with escaped prisoners. But the humans were not standard prisoners. Laura Kim waited in a dark corridor with Vex Torin beside her. She held a weapon in one hand and a needle filled with sedative in the other. Her breathing was slow and steady. Her heartbeat was calm. 2 Dominion guards walked past their hiding spot. They never saw the humans until it was too late. Laura shot the first guard through the head. The second guard spun around, raising his weapon. But Vex Torin was already moving. The old warrior grabbed the guard's arm and twisted. Bones cracked. The guard screamed. Laura pressed the needle into the guard's neck. The sedative worked fast. Within seconds, the guard was unconscious. Why not kill him? Vex Torin asked. Laura was already stripping the guard of his armor and weapons. Because a dead guard is just a body. An unconscious guard needs to be carried, guarded, and treated. He costs them resources. He makes them scared. She handed the armor to one of the other prisoners, a young Tellurian named Vess. Put this on. You're about the same size. Vex Torin watched the human work. She was efficient, practical, and completely ruthless. 30 minutes ago, he had seen her treating wounds on an injured prisoner, speaking gentle words and holding their hand. Now she was talking about unconscious bodies, like they were chess pieces. How do you do it? He asked. How do you switch between kindness and killing so easily? Laura looked at him. Her eyes were calm and empty. The people under my care are my responsibility, she said. Anyone who threatens them stops being a person to me. They become an obstacle. And I remove obstacles. Vex Torin felt a chill run down his spine. By the end of the first day, the Dominion had lost 18 soldiers. 12 were dead, 6 were unconscious. Their weapons and armor were now in the hands of the escaped prisoners. The humans set traps in the corridors. Simple things. Wires stretched at ankle height. Chemical irritants that burned the eyes. Devices that made loud noises to distract and confuse. The Dominion soldiers began to fear walking through their own ship. Captain Daniel Reyes directed the attacks from the shadows. He divided his people into 3 teams and sent them hunting through different sections of the ship. They never attacked the same place twice. They never followed a pattern that the Dominion could predict. This is not war, Toxran said in wonder. This is slaughter. This is slaughter. Humans call it guerrilla warfare, Daniel replied. We invented it thousands of years ago. Small groups attacking larger forces. Hit and run. Never fight fair. Never give your enemy a target. On the second day, the Dominion soldiers stopped patrolling. They gathered in large groups, barricading themselves in the ship's main sections. They were afraid to walk the corridors. They jumped at shadows. They shot at sounds that turned out to be nothing. Sam Porter used the ship's communication system to play recordings of human voices in empty sections of the ship. Screams. Laughter. Whispers. The Dominion soldiers could not tell what was real and what was fake. By the third day, the Iron Fist was no longer a prison ship. It was a hunting ground. Vex Torin found Captain Daniel Reyes sitting alone in a dark corridor. The human was cleaning a weapon that he had taken from a dead guard. His movements were slow and careful, almost peaceful. How many have we killed? Vex Torin asked. Daniel did not look up. 63 confirmed. Another 20 or so wounded badly enough that they can't fight. We've lost 4 of our own. 4 dead out of 34, against 200. Vex Torin shook his head. I have fought in armies with better odds that lost more. Daniel finished cleaning the weapon and looked at the old warrior. We're not fighting them, vexed Torin. We're hunting them. There's a big difference. When you fight, you trade blow for blow. When you hunt, you choose every engagement. You only attack when you have the advantage. You disappear the moment they might win. He stood up and stretched his injured arm. Humans have been doing this for millions of years. We hunted animals that were bigger, faster, and stronger. We didn't beat them with muscle. We beat them with patience, with teamwork, with the willingness to keep going when everything said we should stop. Vex Torin thought about the human female who had tracked the Dominion assassin for 3 days. He was beginning to understand. What happens next? He asked. Daniel smiled. It was the smile of a predator who knew his prey was cornered. Tomorrow, we take the bridge, and then we go home. On the morning of the 4th day, Commander Krathel stood on the bridge of the Iron Fist and counted his remaining soldiers. He had started with 200. Now, he had less than 50 who could still fight. The rest were dead, wounded, or missing. Missing. That was the word that haunted him. Soldiers did not go missing on their own ship, but over the past 3 days, Dominion warriors had been disappearing from corridors, from posts, from their own bunks. They were found hours later, dead or unconscious, stripped of their weapons and armor. 34 escaped prisoners had done this. 12 humans and 22 aliens. They had turned his ship into a slaughterhouse. Krathel had ordered his remaining forces to retreat to the bridge and seal the doors. The bridge was the most defended section of the ship, with reinforced walls, heavy blast doors, and enough weapons to hold off an army. His soldiers were packed inside like frightened animals, jumping at every sound. We should call for reinforcement, his second-in-command said. The fleet is only 2 days away. And tell them what? Krathel snarled. That I lost a ship to slaves? That 34 prisoners killed 150 of my warriors? I would be executed for incompetence. He stared at the security monitors. Most of them showed nothing but empty corridors and flickering lights. But every few minutes, he saw shadows moving, quick glimpses of figures that vanished before the cameras could focus. The humans were out there, waiting, watching. A knock came at the bridge door. Everyone froze. The bridge doors were 3 inches of solid metal, sealed from the inside. No one should be able to knock on them. Commander Krathel. The voice came from the other side of the door. It was calm, almost friendly. This is Captain Daniel Reyes of the Starlight Meridian. I'd like to talk. Krathel walked to the door and pressed the communication button. What do you want, human? I want you to open this door and surrender your ship. In exchange, I'll let you and your soldiers live. Laughter rippled through the bridge. The Dominion soldiers needed something to laugh at. They had spent 3 days being afraid. You cannot breach this door, Krathel said. It was built to withstand plasma cannons. You have nothing that can touch it. You will starve before we surrender. There was a pause. Then Daniel spoke again. You're right. I can't breach the door, but I don't need to. Krathel heard a faint hissing sound. He looked around the bridge and saw thin wisps of gas seeping through the ventilation system. His eyes began to burn. His throat tightened. What have you done? He demanded. Your ship has a centralized air system, Daniel explained. All the air on the bridge comes from the same recyclers. My engineer spent the last 6 hours rerouting those recyclers through the chemical storage bay. Right now, you're breathing a mixture of oxygen and a compound that your species is very allergic to. It won't kill you. But in about 10 minutes, you'll all be too sick to stand. The Dominion soldiers began coughing. Some dropped their weapons and clutched at their throats. Others stumbled against walls, trying to stay upright. Of course, Daniel continued. You could always open the door. Fresh air out here. Well, mostly fresh. We're wearing masks. Krathel felt his knees weaken. He looked at his soldiers. They were falling, one by one, choking on air that had become poison. How? He gasped. How could you do this? You are cargo haulers. You are soft. You are prey. Daniel's voice was patient, almost gentle. That's your mistake, Commander. That's always been your mistake. You looked at us and saw prey. You saw creatures without claws or fangs or venom. You thought that made us weak. The hissing continued. More soldiers fell. But you missed the most important thing about humans. We evolved on a world where everything wanted to kill us. The weather, the animals, the plants, even some of the water. Our ancestors hunted everything that moved until we ran out of predators. Then we started hunting each other for practice. We turned killing into a science, an art, and a sport. Krathel collapsed against the door. His vision was blurring. He could barely breathe. You made a mistake when you took us prisoner, Daniel said. You made us feel like prey. And humans really don't like feeling like prey. The bridge doors slid open. Captain Daniel Reyes stood on the other side, flanked by Laura Kim and Sam Porter. They wore simple breathing masks over their faces. Their eyes were cold and hard. Behind them stood the rest of the escaped prisoners. 30 survivors who had walked through 3 days of blood and death to reach this moment. Krathel looked up at the human who had destroyed his ship, killed his soldiers, and turned the Dominion's own weapons against them. The same human he had kicked in the face 8 days ago. The same human he had called weak and soft and nothing. What are you? Krathel whispered. Daniel crouched down to meet his eyes. We're humans. We're the species that learned to love and fight and build and destroy. We're the species that walked out of Africa and conquered a world. We're the species that looked at the stars and said, we want those too. He stood up and gestured to his crew. They moved through the bridge, binding the Dominion soldiers with their own restraints. Quick, efficient, professional. And now, Daniel added, we're the species that's taking your ship. 6 hours later, the Iron Fist dropped out of hyperspace near Earth's embassy station. The Dominion markings had been covered with makeshift flags, displaying the human symbol for freedom. A ragged crew of former prisoners stood on the bridge, staring at the lights of civilization. Vex Torin stood beside Daniel Reyes, watching the humans send a communication to the embassy. Earth Diplomatic Corps. This is Captain Daniel Reyes of the cargo vessel Starlight Meridian. We were captured by Dominion raiders 8 days ago. We escaped and commandeered their ship, requesting permission to dock and transfer prisoners. There was a long pause. Then a voice came back, thick with disbelief. Captain Reyes, please confirm. You escaped from a Dominion prison ship and captured the vessel? That's correct. How many Dominion soldiers were aboard? Daniel glanced at Laura Kim. She checked her notes. Original crew was approximately 200, Daniel reported. Final count is 47 survivors, all in custody. Another pause. Even longer this time. Captain Reyes, are you saying that your crew of 12 killed over 150 Dominion warriors? Daniel looked at Vex Torin. The old Krellian warrior was staring at him with something like religious awe. It wasn't just us, Daniel said. We had help from some very brave people from other worlds. But yes, that's approximately correct. Permission to dock is granted, the voice said weakly. And, Captain? There's going to be a lot of paperwork. Daniel laughed. It was the first time he had really laughed in 8 days. Understood, Embassy. Reyes out. He turned to face his crew. 12 humans, who had walked into hell and walked out again. They were bruised, bloodied, and exhausted. They were also alive. I'm sorry, Daniel said quietly. I'm sorry for everything that happened. I should have protected you better. Laura Kim stepped forward. You did protect us, Captain. You kept us together. You gave us a plan. You gave us hope. Sam Porter nodded. We're alive because of you. All of us. The other crew members voiced their agreement. Even the alien prisoners, who barely understood human language, recognized the moment and added their own sounds of gratitude. Daniel Reyes, captain of a small cargo ship, looked at the people he had led through darkness and felt something warm spread through his chest. Pride. Love. The fierce joy of survival. Let's go home, he said. Back in the Grand Assembly Hall, Vex Torin finished his testimony. The council members sat in stunned silence. That is what humans are, the old warrior said. That is what you are inviting into the Federation. Creatures who seem soft and kind and weak until you threaten them. Then they become something else entirely. High Arbiter Zixala spoke carefully. What do you recommend? Vex Torin's scarred face twisted into something that might have been respect or fear. Accept them. Make them your friends. Give them whatever they ask for. Because I promise you, with all my years of war, you do not want to be their enemies. He turned and limped toward the exit. Then he paused. One more thing. I am told that humans become significantly less reasonable when you threaten their children or their pets. I recommend never testing this. The Veloci ambassador made a note. The humans were accepted into the Federation 3 days later. Their application was approved unanimously, without debate, without conditions. No one wanted to find out what happened when humans were told no.